Double question of the day. First question is, does the CIA want to control your mind? I'll give you the answer to that. Of course, it's yes, if you're looking at the history of the CIA, which brings me to my second question. Have you heard of the CIA Operation MK Ultra? Let's talk about that. Plus, Pete Davidson is back, and he's apparently dating Emily Ratajkowski, and it's getting weird, people. All that and more today on Candace Owens. Okay, so there's a lot on my mind today, so I'm just going to splatter at you. I'm just going to talk at you. And it sort of begins with the CIA program MK Ultra, which, like all very bad CIA programs, they tell us that it's been discontinued and we get no more information about it, and we're supposed to believe that it magically went away. So let's talk about MK Ultra. MK Ultra was a top secret CIA project in which the agency conducted hundreds of experiments, sometimes on unwitting U.S. citizens, to assess the potential use of LSD and other drugs for mind control. Okay, so this is about mind control. Now, why was the CIA interested in controlling the minds of masses? Well, I guess the first answer is because they're the CIA. The second answer is because in the 1950s and the 1960s, at the height of the Cold War, the United States government were fearful that the Soviets and the Chinese people were using mind control to brainwash U.S. prisoners of war in Korea. They were so fearful of this that they said, well, we then should be controlling the minds of people. That's what they started to do. They started a program which involved more than 150 human experiments with psychedelic drugs, paralytics, and electroshock therapy. Now, sometimes the subjects knew that they were being experimented on. Other times they completely didn't. Kind of notoriously, you guys might be familiar with Whitey Bulger. He talked about how when he was in prison, they were doing these experiments on the inmates and all of the crazy things that they would see as they were being dosed with LSD. They began experimenting with LSD under the direction of a chemist and a poison expert named Sidney Gottlieb. And he believed that the agency could harness the drug's mind-altering properties for brainwashing or psychological torture. Think about this. This is really crazy. There was a project under MK Ultra that was called Operation Midnight Climax. And what did they do? Well, the CIA paid prostitutes to drug unsuspecting men. And they thought that this was a perfect audience to do this to, because the men would be so ashamed that they were with a prostitute that they wouldn't then say something terrible happened to me or report it to police officers. And they didn't just observe this by talking to the prostitute after she had drugged them and say, hey, what happened? They actually created a room. The CIA put together a room in one of their notorious safe houses, and they actually had the experiments take place behind a two-way mirror. So they were watching it live. Imagine you're a CIA agent, and you're paying a prostitute, and this person, this unsuspecting man, thinks he's going to sleep with a prostitute, but in reality, he has stepped into a CIA safe house, and there are some agents behind the wall that are watching him and seeing how he reacts to being drugged with LSD. That actually took place. Your government did this, and you should know that. You should know that because it got worse than that. They were also drugging people that were in hospitals unsuspectingly, and probably most notoriously, they were drugging one another. The CIA, just at the day at the office, typical day at the office, would slip LSD into one of their agents' coffees to see how he would react to it. I say that part was rather notorious because that actually led to the death of one individual. His name was Frank Olson. Frank Olson was a scientist who worked for the CIA, and at a 1953 CIA retreat, he drank a cocktail that had been secretly spiked with LSD. What happened? Well, just a few short days later, he tumbled to his death from the window of a New York City hotel room in an alleged suicide. That seems a little bizarre, but don't think too much of it. That would make you a conspiracy theorist. It's totally normal that they were unwittingly drugging people with LSD all of the time. Now, why am I bringing this up to you today? Why is this on my mind today? Well, if you want to know how that concludes, there was congressional hearings. Don't you guys love congressional hearings? It's like the government wants you to think that they're doing something to change things. Like, we're going to have a congressional hearing to show it. This is unacceptable. Hillary Clinton, what happened with these emails? No comment, no comment. Nothing happens ever. Well, same idea when the CIA gets caught doing stuff. They had congressional hearings. They declined to answer a lot of questions, said that they didn't remember anything, and that was it. We're supposed to believe that the program magically ended. Well, of course, the government's interest in controlling the minds of the masses did not end there. We know there were other programs like Operation Mockingbird in which CIA agents were littered throughout the mainstream media. So knowing that they're interested in influencing your ideas, it is, of course, a natural conclusion that they are interested in controlling Hollywood, right? Do you really think it's a coincidence that everybody that's in Hollywood that has a platform is in lockstep in all of their opinions? If there's no variation in opinions, you know what they think because they have a platform, right? They are my body, my choice, and they supported Hillary Clinton throughout the election, and every time they're angry about anything, they're all posting black squares. Everything just feels like somebody's just calling them up and saying, do this, right? Now, I was thinking about this today because I watched an old clip of Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, I'm not talking about his recent Saturday Night Live performance, but I'm talking about Dave Chappelle. If you don't recall this, I'm going to remind you of back when we were told, the public was told that Dave Chappelle was crazy, that he had a mental break. You remember these articles that started to appear. You may be kind of foggy here and going, yeah, I do kind of remember that Dave Chappelle disappeared for a while. And it turned out that he went to Africa. He just up and went to Africa and walked away from a $50 million contract. And so I was reminding myself of this and going, when did he sort of arrive back? Like, why did now suddenly he's hosting SNL again? He's being accepted back into the good graces of Hollywood. He's got Netflix deals. Not a typical arc for somebody who's just, we've been told, is mentally crazy. So what happened? What changed? And I found this old interview between him and Oprah. It took place in 2006 after he left. And he is talking about why he left, right? In this interview, he's talking about how there were all of these weird pressures where suddenly there were individuals that were trying to encourage him as a black man to wear a dress. Like there was this, he thought it was a bit weird and he thought there was some sort of a conspiracy because he was like, no, I don't want to wear this dress. But they kept wanting him to put on a dress and he thought that was weird. And he was under a lot of pressure and he was arguing with executives, not just about the dress, but about the content that he was producing. He was in the spotlight. And then something even more bizarre happens, right? They essentially start leaking stories about him in the press that aren't true. So at first they start saying that he has pneumonia, and then they start saying that he has writer's block. But don't let me tell you, I want you to actually listen to Dave Chappelle in his own words, speaking to Oprah in 2006. Take a listen.
I still haven't gotten to why you just disappeared. So you had that moment, the guy's laughing too much. Was that the tipping point for you? Was that the straw?
That was the first tipping point.
Okay.
And then they put in the paper that I had pneumonia, or God knows what. Mm-hmm. It was walking pneumonia because I was walking all over the place. I was relaxing. And then after that, I was coming back to the show, and then they were like, well, Dave, you should just back up the pneumonia story. And I was like, that was your thing. I'm not backing up a pneumonia story.
So pause there. So that's interesting immediately, because what he's saying is that they just inserted a story about him that wasn't true, right? They just told him, hey, just say you have pneumonia. Just back up this claim. Let's continue and hear what else he says. And
then the next day it was in the paper that I had writer's block. Then I knew something was getting ready to get stressful because I hadn't even started writing. Mm-hmm. I was on the schedule to write. So I was like, what's going on? Are they going to...
So these are your people trying to
manipulate me. Sounds like somebody's trying to put young Dave in a compromising position.
Okay, so that's interesting. He's speaking about handlers. This idea of Hollywood handlers that are trying to manipulate the narrative, trying to control some sort of a narrative. And he's wise to it. He's realizing, wait a second, something's going on here. Let's keep going.
But, okay, so then I got worse. So when I said I'm not going to do it, then all of a sudden it was like, well, now he has walking pneumonia. And then I knew long before I walked, I had considered walking.
You had considered
I had considered walking because I went back to work and the vitamin love was gone because it was a real ugly negotiation. It's a situation where now everybody's taking credit for this and that and the other. It was getting ridiculous. And I knew I was going to leave, so I got ahead of schedule and I bounced. And I didn't tell anybody where I was going. The whole time, they're trying to convince me I'm insane.
Stop right there. He's essentially telling us that he escaped. He just got up and he left because he realized that this was a toxic situation and they were trying to convince him that he was insane. Let's keep going.
They were trying to get me to take psychotic medication. Yeah. Like I'm sitting around, I was stressed out, but the people that were telling me I was insane, I believe that they knew what was going on. So this was troublesome.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not taking this medicine, man, because I know these people be trying to control you or maybe discredit you. I was afraid,
But you were stressed out. That's why.
There's no question. But it's very stressful for someone to constantly walk behind you and say, you're insane.
Wow. Just to recap there, okay? He's not able to be controlled and he's pushing back against executives. And then all of a sudden he starts to realize that there are stories being leaked about him in the press. First suggesting that he has pneumonia. It's not true. Then suggesting that he has writer's block. Then he starts having a bunch of people around him telling him that he's crazy, trying to convince him that he's crazy and trying to get him to take psychotic medications. Why would they do that? And what Dave Chappelle is being really clear here about is that he felt that they were involved in this narrative. The people around him were colluding, essentially, to present this narrative that he was crazy, to try to get him to take the medicine. And he's very clear that when a bunch of people keep telling you that you're crazy, you'll start to question your own sanity. You'll start to wonder, hey, what is going on here? Am I crazy? I think it's very telling. And the reason why it sent a chill down my spine is because I had heard this version of events very recently. I have not been shy about the fact that I am friends with Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, and he shared a very similar experience with me before this entire fallout took place. Interesting fact about Kanye is that he's been in the public sphere since 1996. But Kanye West was never called crazy, despite being in the public from 1996 all the way through to 2015. He was never called crazy ever by the media until he did what? He put on the MAGA hat. He put on a red hat and said that he wanted to support Donald Trump for president. He liked Donald Trump for president. And then what happened? Well, he was told by a person that was very close to him that in order to get his life back, right, he needed to just say that he was crazy. So a close friend of his, that close friend is Harley Pasternak. Harley Pasternak is a trainer to the stars, right? He trains all of the stars, all of the celebrities. He trained Brittany Murphy. Remember her? We were told she was crazy and then she wound up dead and he was involved in her documentary. Well, he trained Kanye West, who was a friend of his, and he said, Kanye, you're not a conservative. You don't support the MAGA movement. Actually, what's wrong with you is you're having a psychotic break. You should take some psychotic medicines. And it was Harley Pasternak that then called 911 and had Kanye sent to the hospital. And it was Harley Pasternak that then leaked that to TMZ, that Kanye West was having a mental break. You guys remember that, right? And then suddenly we're all told that he has bipolar disorder, and he believed it. He believed that something was wrong with him. Like, obviously, everyone around him is saying you couldn't possibly like Donald Trump. So he believed that he was bipolar, right? And so it's interesting to consider Harley Pasternak. Why is Harley Pasternak an interesting character? Well, the first thing is his background. Harley Pasternak actually served as a scientist at the Department of National Defense, DND, Defense and Civil Institute for Environmental Medicine. That is, they support the Canadian Armed Forces, okay? So he was a scientist for 2 years at DRDC Toronto, a military research station that is part of the DND. The DRDC researches human systems integration, social and psychological factors that affect the resolution of conflict, psychology of malicious intent, and social and cultural factors influencing behavior. Could be relevant, could also not be relevant, but it's interesting that he then becomes a trainer and he's got this background, and then he encourages Kanye West to take medicine and has him committed to the hospital because he put on a MAGA hat. Now, all of that, of course, could be oh, well, whatever. Maybe Harley thought that Kanye really was having an episode and was just trying to help his friend. Except recently, and what's really interesting about this is that the press has been completely silent on it, Harley Pasternak made another appearance. This time it was on Kanye's Twitter feed when he was going after various people in his life. Kanye tweeted that he was misdiagnosed, right? That his friend Harley Pasternak misdiagnosed him back in 2016. And Kanye also shared, his exact tweet was, "What should be obvious by now is that I was raised to stand for my truth regardless of consequences. So I will say this again. I was mentally misdiagnosed and nearly drugged out of my mind to make me a manageable, well-behaved celebrity." I'm sorry, what? And in case you think he's just saying that and he's just being crazy, because that sounds crazy. What do you mean? They were just going to drug you to make you, to manage you? That sounds insane. In case you think he's crazy, he also shared a text from Harley Pasternak, a recent text from Harley Pasternak. This is what Harley Pasternak wrote to Kanye. "I'm going to help you one of a couple of ways. First, you and I sit down and have a loving and open conversation, but you don't use cuss words and everything that is discussed is based in fact and not some crazy stuff that dumb friend of yours told you or you saw in a tweet. Second option," this is where it gets interesting, "I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same." That is written to him by his, I guess somebody just helping him at the gym, his trainer. "I'll have you institutionalized again. I'll send you back to zombie land." Talking about drugging a man so he doesn't recognize his own children. And the media has stayed radio silent on this. So that to me is the conspiracy. Why on earth would the media remain radio silent on the fact that Harley Pasternak is openly admitting that he had something to do with Kanye being institutionalized once and he's threatening to do it again? In what world is that legal? Again, there are a lot of questions that should be asked, and we should have the courage to ask them because it is getting very scary out there, and we are starting to recognize that our government is involved in way more than we could have ever imagined. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay, I want to take a moment to talk to you guys about ExpressVPN. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that ExpressVPN is the VPN that I trust to keep my data secure because it creates a secure encrypted tunnel between my device and the internet so that hackers can't steal my personal data, passwords, financial details, or more. In case you didn't know, hackers make serious cash selling personal information on the dark web, but ExpressVPN makes it easier than ever to keep your information safe. Just fire up the app, click one button, and you are instantly protected. Plus, ExpressVPN works on all of your devices so you can stay secure on the go. Use the VPN that I use to secure your online data today at expressvpn.com/Candace. Use my link at expressvpn.com/Candace to get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/Candace to get 3 months free. Okay, now it's time for some topics du jour. So first up, in case you missed this yesterday, Pete Davidson. You guys know Pete Davidson. He was on Saturday Night Live. His personal life was bigger than his character on Saturday Night Live. In fact, he just objectively not that funny. Saturday Night Live obviously has been suffering from a lack of comedy. And he, I think, was a part of this. Nothing that he really did was that funny. And despite this, the mainstream media has praised this guy since he came onto the scene, right? He has been dating a ton of A-list beautiful women. Nobody really understands why. He at first was dating Ariana Grande. In fact, he got engaged to her and then she broke off the engagement. Then he was dating Kaya Gerber, who is a beautiful top model who's now dating Austin Butler. He then was dating Kate Beckinsale, a tiny bit older, absolutely beautiful. Then I think the most notoriously began dating Kim Kardashian following her separation from Kanye, and this sort of led to a mudslinging within the press. Obviously, I am biased, but I think I am accurately biased, which is to say that I think I'm on the right side here, that I don't like Pete Davidson because of the whole Kanye fiasco because it just points to the hypocrisy of the media. The media was incessantly telling us that Kanye was crazy, Kanye was crazy, Kanye was crazy because he was obviously slinging a lot of mud at Pete Davidson, who was publicly going all around with his still wife, even though they were separated. And you might think that's crazy, except the press declined to comment on the fact that Pete Davidson had gotten Kanye's children's name tattoo onto his body. So what man in their right mind sees that you're dating his ex-wife or his still wife, but separated, right, for a couple of months, and then you go and he got like 6 tattoos, all of Kim, and then it culminated. He also got branded. Don't forget this. We're talking about crazy. Kim Kardashian went on the Ellen DeGeneres show. She said, I have been that Pete Davidson got an actual brand of her on his body. That's actually insane. And then it culminates into him getting a tattoo of all of her children's names, all of Kanye's children's names. Kanye reacts to that, and the press says, it's Kanye that's crazy, not Pete. Pete's not crazy. It's totally fine, even though we know that Pete also went to a psychiatric hospital after he was dating Kaya Gerber. He had some sort of a mental break, but the press protects him at all causes and makes it seem like he's just this amazing guy. They always talk about how he just got a huge package. It's very much sexualized him, and all women should want him. So I don't know what's going on or if he's got the greatest agent at CAA ever, but he keeps dating more and more women that are very attractive. And now he's with Emily Ratajkowski, who is also just splitting from her husband after claims of infidelity. She claims her husband has been infidel. Of course, Emily Ratajkowski has also been infidel. She's always naked on the internet. I feel like I've personally had sex with her. So that's how many times I've seen her naked. And yet somehow you're supposed to think of her as a victim, and now she's with Pete Davidson. Again, I just am bringing this not because it's important, but because I just find the media obsession, I should say, with Pete Davidson and trying to make us believe that he's just this totally stable guy who is just very attractive to very beautiful women. I find it to be suspect. It's something that I've just been tracking for a while and going, something a little odd about Pete Davidson, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I want to move on to a more important story, just because it, again, points to hypocrisy. So 10-year-old boy asks to go to the school nurse because he wants the nurse to put Vaseline on his new tattoo. So the nurse sees this tattoo and she calls the police. And it turns out the boy had gotten tattooed with his mother's permission from a neighbor, according to local authorities. Now, some states have no minimum age for receiving a tattoo if a parent allows it. But in New York, which is where this took place, you have to be 18 or older. So both the tattoo artist, who was a guy named Austin Smith, who was 20 years old and was not licensed, and the boy's mother were arrested. Now, the boy's mother is 33 years old. The pictures of the boy's arm stirred outrage all across news sites and social media. And Dr. Cora Bruner, who is a pediatrician and a professor at the University of Washington Medical Center's Seattle Children's Hospital, she has come out and she has said that tattoo is a permanent mark or symbol that you are putting on your body. And I don't think that kids under 18 have that kind of agency to make a decision. We need to look at these laws again. Now, let me say that on its face, I am totally fine with people being outraged that a 10-year-old got a tattoo. I actually totally agree that a 10-year-old does not possess within them the ability to quite understand this is a permanent mark that you're going to have forever. And the fact that his mother allowed him to do this calls into question her sanity. What I like to point to those is the tremendous hypocrisy here that you now have a pediatrician and you have psychologists and professors coming out and saying, this is really wrong. Kids don't have the ability to make this decision. But I bet if you followed their train of thought and you started talking about the transgendered agenda, these same professors and doctors would say, of course a child understands that they want to chop their penis off. Of course a child understands that they want to take medicine to block their puberty, which of course has very severe indications for the rest of their life. These exact same individuals who are saying that this tattoo is so wrong are fully on board with what is happening in the classroom. If you want me to be, if I had to pick, both of these things are bad. If I had to pick between giving my 10-year-old a tattoo, making that decision for him, or allowing my children to take puberty blockers, I would take door A every single time. So again, I find this story to be hypocritical, and I would have no doubt that these same school nurses, we're talking about New York, who are being told not to inform the parent if their child has concerns about their gender, the stuff that they're actually brainwashing them with in classroom, right? That same nurse would not have called the cops had that child have been administered puberty blockers, which is what they're trying to get passed. These are the state laws that everyone's trying to get passed to pretend that children are somehow, I don't know, have the autonomy, the bodily autonomy to be able to decide whether or not they want to get these procedures and surgeries and to take these pills. And the last thing that I will say to point to the irony is that this is happening in New York State, which essentially forced a bunch of children to get vaccinated against COVID in order to be able to go back to school. And we knew the implications early on. The media is just now admitting it. Oh my God, we actually didn't know that this could cause myocarditis. So I'll bet, can't say it for sure, that kid was totally cleared to go and get a shot for something that he had a virtual 100% chance of surviving, a little virus that he would have been fine surviving. But the shot, which could have given him myocarditis, they would have said was totally safe and effective. Again, don't agree with children getting tattoos, but also don't agree with any of the other nonsense. So I just like to keep it ideologically consistent. It is no exaggeration to say that becoming a mother has been the greatest joy of my life. Being able to bring life into this world is a miracle that every mother and child deserves. Unfortunately, our society has brainwashed us into believing that these precious lives are nothing more than clumps of cells. That is why I am so excited to let you guys know that my show has partnered with preborn pregnancy clinics. Preborn is a pro-life ministry that provides ultrasounds to women who are considering abortion. When a mother sees their child and hears their heartbeat, she will more often than not choose life. The work that they are doing is so important. I want to share a client testimonial with you guys so that you can hear it in one of the mother's own words. Take a listen to Olivia's story.
So Race's father is, he was my mentor. We met working at the shop. I was comfortable being along with him. I thought we were good friends. I kind of took that as an opportunity to just get to know him on a deeper level. I guess he wasn't interested in that, and he was more interested in the physical aspect of everything. When I found out I was pregnant, he was not okay with that either. He pushed for an abortion, and that's how I came to the clinic. So I felt like the only ones that were really there for me were the women at the clinic, and it actually did empower me and help me. I was late enough to get my ultrasound. Still remember, feeling everything. It was changing. I said I would not get an abortion. So I was gonna raise this baby with or without him. So he said without. I think if I didn't find the clinic, then I probably would have considered abortion. The women there are just so kind, they're just so genuine. I would not be this strong without the clinic. My dreams now revolve around my son. I wanna let people know that it's not over. No matter what age you are, you find out you're pregnant, it's not over, and that there are places to go. And I want the individuals that are involved in the clinic to know how much we are all eternally grateful for everything that they do. If I did abort my son, I would live with many regrets. Now that I have him, I don't think I can be in this world without him. My son saved me. I can honestly say that. Changed my life for the better.
Over the past 16 years, Preborn has counseled over 450,000 women considering abortion and saved more than 188,000 babies. Preborn introduces expectant mothers to their children via ultrasound, and 80% of the time, she is more likely to choose life. One ultrasound costs just $28. You can sponsor 5 ultrasounds for $144. However, if you are in a place to give more, please do so. Through a match program going on right now, your tax-deductible gift is doubled. Whatever you donate, you'll be saving twice as many children. Together, we are on a mission to rescue 1,500 babies before the end of this year, and I know that we can do it. To donate securely, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Or go to preborn.com/Candace. That's preborn.com/Candace. You consider yourself pro-life, now's the time to act. Help us save 1,500 babies at preborn.com/Candace today. Jumping into the next story and talking about creepy teachers and a creepy education system. Project Veritas, you guys know them. They are our friends. Love James O'Keefe. Have had him on this program many times. They released a new video today exposing an educator that worked past tense because of the scandal, worked at a prestigious Connecticut private school. You guys know that I'm from Connecticut, so this story hit me differently. It just makes me just so terrified. My sisters still live there. So there is an educator named Iman Rosti who made sexually explicit statements about his current high school students. Now, he oversees Green Farms Academy's Writing Center, and he also teaches middle school English. and is the 7th grade dean. So this is not some new guy who just got here. He was recorded fantasizing about his young female pupils. I'd like to apologize in advance, but take a listen to what he said in his own words.
Every day there's different angles, green, black, white. We make sure that the panty is positioned in a way that I actually see the thing. That's just brutal.
You've not been tempted? Yes.
Everything.
It's hard.
It's very hard. I mean, literally and figuratively. Not with my K-12, but college. I had sex with many of my students.
So he's being turned on by underwear that his pupils are wearing. And then he also goes as far as to say that he's also had sex with some of the college students that he sees. And all of this has been caught on camera. And of course, it has been received the right way. People are understandably outraged, and this person, as an update, has been removed. But it's ridiculous to me that it takes a Project Veritas reporter to be able to go undercover. And we bring these stories to the forefront because it is very obvious that they are trying to destroy the relationships that children have with their parents because they are looking to create relationships, to have those relationships mimicked inside the classroom. And it's why I'm constantly talking about all these various agendas. And when they're saying, don't tell your mom this or don't tell your dad that, and then you have a bunch of people that are working that are talking to your children about sex, wildly inappropriate, used to not take place in America before the 1970s, right? Sex education was something that was thought up by ideologues. Planned Parenthood got involved trying to teach your children about everybody's just having sex, so we should learn about it in school. Actually, everybody was not having sex. The majority of the student population was graduating with their virginity intact outside of high school, and now it's the exact reverse because they're teaching sex in the classroom. They are intentionally sexualizing children and at the same time somehow sexualizing the adults in the classroom. Again, I am speaking generally. I'm not, of course, suggesting that every teacher is horrific and every teacher has sexual fantasies about your children. But I am saying that what will come down the pipeline, right, if we don't stand up to these more nefarious agendas, like kids being told as young as kindergarten that they can pick their genders and that their genitals don't mean anything. What do you think is going to be the natural product of this? And when you see these teachers that are fighting for the right to talk to your kids about sex, yeah, you're looking at somebody who is a predator, somebody whose mind is not right and should not be in the classroom. And that's all I'm going to say on that topic. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about today in our news roundup is this very weird story. And of course, more details are going to come out about it. But 4 University of Idaho students were found dead in their off-campus home that they shared. And all the police officers are saying is that it was a crime of passion. They won't say anything else. The students' names were Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Kaylee Goncalves. They were 20, 21, 20, and 21, respectively. And they were all found dead in a house that they shared in Moscow, Idaho on Sunday. And again, the police nor the parents are disclosing how exactly they died. It's obviously a tremendously sad situation. I do know for a fact that there was no guns involved, of course, or you would know Democrats would be marching about gun legislation. There was one individual that was on Twitter who was tweeting at the Daily Wire saying that he had more details, and we have reached out to him regarding it because it's just a story that, of course, with wanting to fully respect the parents that are involved and are going through this tremendous tragedy. It's something that we want to share to the public because it's scary. The idea that you could send your child to a college campus and that all of them would die. Again, I would think if I had seen the story and hadn't seen the phrase crime of passion, that it was related to a drug overdose, but that is obviously wrong because why would they refer to it as a crime of passion? So what I said is purely speculative, but we are following this story. The police are saying that they're still trying to narrow down exactly what it is that happened. It's one of a plenitude of possibilities, including a burglary gone wrong or a robbery gone wrong. Any of those is a possibility and not one to the exclusion of others. Again, incredibly vague statement which came from the police, and we should all be paying attention to that story. And that is all that I will say on that. Okay, you guys know that I am apocalypse minded. My husband and I are always talking about how we would survive if we had to live off of our own land and fend for ourselves. Hopefully, it never comes to that, but in case it does, you probably should be prepared. Now is the time to get emergency food from one of my favorite sponsors, My Patriot Supply. Act now and you'll save $250 off their 3-month emergency food kit when you go to preparewithwire.com. That's right, $250 off each kit that you'll need to get through fuel or food shortages. This amazing kit is packed with breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, and snacks. You'll consume over 2,000 calories per day for proper energy. You normally pay $250 or more, but My Patriot Supply wants to give your family the peace of mind that comes from knowing that you are prepared for the worst. Get one kit for each person in your family. Your order ships fast and free and arrives in unmarked boxes for your privacy. Go to preparewithwire.com right now before it's too late. Preparewithwire.com. Okay, now it's time for my daily comment roundup, where I hope that you guys are being nice to me in the comments, but you're usually not, and it's okay because I keep coming back for more abuse. So the first comment is from Rachel Johnson, and it is regarding the government wars. She says, thank you for mentioning the government's role in creating addicts through prescription medication. I work in substance abuse treatment, and the amount of clients who got their start on reckless amounts of poorly supervised prescriptions is just gross and alarming. You are correct. It is both gross and alarming. And what's especially gross and alarming about it is the fact that when drug dealers kill people or create addicts of people, they are actually held accountable and they serve prison sentences. And yet, for whatever reason, the vaccine manufacturers are just told they have to pay a fine, right? $1 billion fine to the government, and nobody ever gets in trouble. So, of course, if you're a pharmaceutical person, you're thinking, okay, whatever, we're creating a bunch of addicts, we're making so much money that if the time comes and we do get caught, all we have to do is pay a fine. Who cares? Because we know that these addicts are going to be knocking on the door looking for the next thing. So I don't like the hypocrisy of that. Jerry Davidson, on the same topic, says, Candace, in the case of the war in Ukraine, I have to disagree with you. And it's on this basis. Back in the 90s, we convinced Ukraine to give up their nukes. It is our responsibility to protect them as we are now. I don't know about the money laundering thing at all. As a vet, they are fighting and fighting hard for their land. Usually I can agree with you, but in this, I see that you are wrong. Jerry, I am going to have to disagree right back at you. First and foremost, we should clarify Ukraine was not convinced to give up their nukes. Ukraine, obviously, after the fall of the USSR, they became Ukraine. And before that, the nukes that were in their country belonged to the Soviets. So we just kind of picked up the Soviets' old nukes. It was not owned by Ukraine in and of itself. It's important to make that distinction first and foremost. The second thing I want to say is that under no circumstances is it our responsibility to take care of somebody else. I'm fundamentally against that idea. I think it has led to so much toxicity worldwide. This kind of concept after World War II that we needed to lean into international liberalism and, the United Nations and the World Economic Forum and all of these things are trying to get us to lock hands globally. And it is the birth of globalism. And I believe that globalism is leading to every disaster that we see today. If you're in Saudi Arabia and you are and you live under religious rule, you may not want the same things that Candace in Tennessee wants. And there's a part of it that's almost arrogant. We Americans must rescue everybody. Everybody wants us to rescue them. And again, as I said yesterday, examine the consequences. When have we ever done that and had it worked out? What ends up happening is that people say that they don't want Americans there. So we shouldn't be so presumptuous to assume that because Zelensky is saying that they want to join NATO, and Zelensky may in fact want to do that, same as the oligarchs that are funding Zelensky, it does not mean that the people on the ground want that. It's our idea that we should be there. And to be honest, it is our desires, us wanting to expand NATO, right, to have a military presence that keeps expanding eastward, that has played at least some role in everything that is happening in that region today. So a lot of the wars, again, are happening because of our idea that we need to have a hand everywhere. And I have a more nationalist approach in believing that every country should mind its own business, beginning with us, maybe ending with us as well. Next comment, this one is regarding Ollie London, who we covered yesterday, the person that is detransitioning after 6 months of a transition from a British man into what he believed was a Korean girl. But then he realized after 6 months that it was a joke and he found God. And now he's getting attention for being, a person that found God. Someone says, Candace, I'm a great fan of your brilliance, but sometimes you may be a bit more cynical than necessary. As stated, if the trans man did find God and then decided to try to undo his past tragic decisions that had been likely fueled by attention gluttony, opportunism, and greed, he could have just taken his self-mutilation money and retired. However, regardless of any payoff he's personally receiving, I respect that his powerful personal story is being used to spotlight the horrendous crimes against our children. His voice, speaking the truth and giving God credit, speaks louder and with more credibility on the topic than even the most logical argument delivered by an eloquent communicator. I agree. I said yesterday, I think it is a net positive that he is speaking out against the transition army, as I like to call them now. But I do just have to say, maybe I am being cynical. I'm a little suspicious. Within 6 months, you go from here to here to here to here. Like, yeah, I get it. People live through experiences and it transforms them. But I am more inclined to believe someone who I would say lived as a man for longer. Just a lot has happened in a short amount of time. Anyways, I'm agreeing with you. I am cynical and I agree that he's a net positive. All right, guys, the next portion of the show is going to be available exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. I'm going to be talking about Trump, who may be making a very big announcement tonight, and I maybe received an invite. So if you're not a member yet, go ahead and click the link in the description and subscribe right now.